When a woman enters a marriage, she carries with her the silent hopes of companionship, respect, and emotional security. But what happens when the very person she calls her husband strips her of that recognition before the world? Such was the fate of a woman whose husband, a cold-hearted millionaire, declared she would never be seen in public as his wife. To him, the marriage was nothing more than a deal, a convenience forced upon him by family obligation. To her, it was meant to be a sacred bond. The moment he uttered those words, something within her broke, not because of the humiliation, but because of the realization that love was not always returned with love. Days turned into weeks, and she began to feel the heavy weight of invisibility. She moved through his grand mansion like a shadow, present, yet unseen. Every dinner party, every business event, every charity gala, she was absent by his design. Yet behind those closed doors, she found her strength growing quietly. The pain that was meant to silence her instead taught her the value of dignity. She realized that while he could hide her from the world, he could not take away her self-worth. Her silence became her rebellion, her composure became her armor, and her kindness, despite his cruelty, became the mirror that slowly began to reflect his emptiness. The world saw a powerful man, respected and adored, but behind that image was a man tormented by his own pride. He noticed how she carried herself with grace, despite being denied her rightful place. He watched her kindness toward his family, her patience when others whispered, her strength when he offered none. Slowly, his arrogance began to crack under the weight of her quiet dignity. He had wanted to punish her for something she never did, for being part of a life he hadn't chosen. But her unspoken strength became the very thing that made him question his choices. There came a day when his empire faced crisis, one that money and influence could not easily fix. While those he trusted turned away, she stood beside him. She faced the storm with the same composure she had shown in her isolation. For the first time, he saw her not as an unwanted wife, but as a woman of remarkable depth and courage. The same woman he had kept hidden now became his light in the darkness. Love, once denied, began to seep through the cracks of his pride, slowly reshaping his heart into something human again. In the end, it was not wealth, beauty, or status that restored their bond. It was dignity. She taught him that love cannot be demanded, but respect must be earned. Her quiet strength transformed his arrogance into humility and his indifference into devotion. What began as a loveless arrangement became a lesson in redemption. The woman he once vowed to hide became the reason he finally learned the meaning of love. Because when love is denied, dignity becomes the voice that speaks louder than silence. She lived in a mansion that sparkled like gold, yet her life was made of shadows. To the world, he was the powerful millionaire, charming, successful, and untouchable. But behind closed doors, there was a woman he called his wife only in name. She was the secret that walked his hallways, the soul he had locked away behind the pride of his own decisions. Her presence was known only to the walls of their home, never to the people he entertained or the circles he moved in. For him, their marriage was a duty, a chain forced upon him by family, not a bond of choice. For her, it was a silent prayer that someday the man she married would see her heart, not just her existence. Every morning, she woke before the sun, sitting by the window as light filled the empty spaces of her world. She would watch him leave, dressed in perfection, while she stayed behind, invisible in her own home. There were days when she would look at their wedding photo tucked away where no one could see and wonder what crime she had committed to deserve a love that hid her. But instead of letting bitterness consume her, she turned to strength. She poured her love into kindness, her pain into purpose. The maids adored her, the staff respected her, and even the flowers she tended in the garden seemed to bloom brighter under her care. She may have been hidden, but her light could not be dimmed. He, on the other hand, lived in a world of applause and admiration. Yet, at the height of his success, there were nights he would return home and feel an ache he couldn't name. She would be there, quiet, composed, offering him tea without a word of reproach. Her silence began to haunt him. It wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence of a woman who had learned to live with dignity when love was denied. The contrast between her grace and his guilt started to unravel the fortress of pride he had built around himself. The man who once believed love was a weakness began to see that her quiet strength was the purest form of courage. One evening he fell ill, too weak to attend his grand business meeting. The same woman he had hidden from the world sat by his side, caring for him through the night. She didn't speak of the years of loneliness, nor the countless times he made her feel unseen. Instead, she simply held his hand when he shivered, offering warmth he didn't deserve but deeply needed. In that silence, something inside him shifted. For the first time, he realized that love doesn't demand recognition. It reveals itself in sacrifice. And in that quiet room, he saw not just the woman he married, but the heart he had silenced for too long. The day he finally introduced her to the world was not out of guilt, but out of awe. He stood before his friends, his colleagues, and the press, and said the words he should have said years ago. "This is my wife." The world applauded, but she didn't need it. Her heart had already forgiven him long before his pride bowed to her love. The hidden wife, the silent heart, became the story of strength that transforms rejection into redemption. For while the world had been blind to her existence, she had always been the unseen force holding his world together. And in the end, her silence spoke louder than all his words ever could. He was a man the world admired, sharp, wealthy, and powerful. His name commanded respect in every boardroom. His decisions shaped empires, and his signature could make or break futures. Yet beneath all the glamour and influence was a heart hardened by pride. When his parents arranged his marriage to a woman of humble origins, he felt insulted. To him, love was irrelevant. Power was what mattered. On their wedding day, he promised her a life of comfort, but not companionship. He told her coldly, "You will never be seen as my wife in public." Those words became the first stone in the wall he built between them, a wall of arrogance, ego, and emotional distance. She entered his mansion not as a bride, but as a stranger to her own fate. Every hallway echoed his absence. Every meal reminded her of her invisibility. Yet she refused to crumble. She understood that her dignity was not dependent on his acknowledgement. While he wielded his power through wealth, she wielded hers through patience. Her quiet grace contrasted his loud pride. She did not argue, she did not plead. She simply lived with integrity and kindness, touching the hearts of those around her. The staff respected her, the poor she helped adored her, and slowly, without realizing it, her silent strength began to outshine his worldly might. In the world outside, his empire was thriving, but inside, he was losing something he couldn't name. The more he saw her unwavering calm, the more he questioned himself. She never demanded love, never complained, never sought revenge. Instead, she met his indifference with compassion. When he fell ill from exhaustion, she was the one who cared for him through sleepless nights. When his business faced betrayal from trusted partners, she stood by him, guiding him with words he didn't deserve to hear. "You can rebuild what's lost, but not if you lose yourself first." Her wisdom began to pierce his pride in ways power never could. One night, as he watched her tending to the servants' children, laughing softly despite years of neglect, something inside him broke. He realized that he had mistaken control for strength and arrogance for confidence. Power had made him feared, but her humility made her loved. For the first time, he saw the hollowness of his victories. He had conquered the world, but lost the warmth of his own home. In her quiet eyes, he saw a reflection of the man he could have been, one led not by ego, but by empathy. It was then he understood. True power doesn't come from wealth or dominance. It comes from the courage to love and the humility to admit you were wrong. When he finally took her hand in public, introducing her as his wife, it wasn't an act of formality. It was redemption. The crowd cheered, but her eyes spoke volumes, forgiveness, not triumph. He had learned that power without heart is an empty crown, and pride without love is a self-made prison. Together they rebuilt what arrogance had almost destroyed. When power meets pride, he once said in a speech years later, it creates distance, but when power meets humility, it creates legacy. And in that truth, their love story found its final piece, a testament that the greatest victories are not won in boardrooms, but in the battles within the heart.